Well, greetings. Thank you for joining us today. We've got a great show for you. It is going to be a very interesting show. It's going to be a little bit off topic in terms of just leadership development, a little bit about leadership recovery. This is Michael Bailey. I'm here with my partner, Rich Barron, and we are Mainline Executive Coaching, ACT, and it is going to be about and cultural transformation and taking action when it comes to leadership recovery and the difficulties that you may have. We have got some great guests with us today. We've got Sophie Agdami. All right, pretty close. Okay. And also, we've got Kylie Butler. And we're going to give you a chance to meet these wonderful ladies. And they've got great, impressive credentials, great experience. They are not just talking because they've learned a few things out of a few books, but this is stuff that they've actually lived. And so we're very happy, very pleased to have them on with us today. So let's start. Sophie, why don't you give us your quick, what I'm saying, your elevator speech in 60 seconds, and then we'll turn it over to Kylie as well. Too much sea level stuff on my mind. And so let's start right there, Sophie.
Sure. Hi. First of all, thanks so much for having us. It's such a pleasure for us to be on your show. So I'm Sophie, grew up in Switzerland and worked and lived in the UK, had a number of senior positions in London and mainly in the marketing and branding space, after which I am now living in Australia. I also had a secondary career alongside my professional one, which was highly functioning addiction to alcohol. And I went to rehab 5 years ago, and that was the beginning of my recovery journey. So I now work as a recovery coach alongside my business partner, Kylie, who's also on the show in our business from here on. Kylie?
Okay, thanks. Okay, so I will jump in with the similar. So I am an Australian, born and raised in Australia, but lived and worked across the world in London and Rome, and I live in Indonesia and Bali now. My corporate career was all in senior HR leadership roles, specializing in a particular area of talent attraction strategy, but ultimately really around understanding the psychology of humans in senior leadership within a corporate environment. So I transitioned from my senior leadership career to starting a consultancy, working with businesses in the leadership team in terms of how they develop their people within the organization, and then simultaneously opened a career coaching business to start working with the executives one-on-one on finding their purpose in their career. And at the same time, I was particularly busy. Not only was I launching podcasts, I was also an active alcoholic and high-functioning alcoholic, and was in this rehab relapse cycle for many years. Once I got sober, initially over 5 years ago, I then became on that journey of learning and understanding more around recovery, retrained, learned about the neuroscience of mental health, and as an executive recovery coach. And Sophie and I have started from here on, where we work specifically with executives in recovery from addiction, and that's often recovery from complex trauma as well.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, we've got real powerhouses with us today, folks, and we're very pleased and excited to have them. Let's start here. I'm going to just share very quickly with everyone that you're watching here on the podcast has had some level of connection with addiction, either directly, I guess all of us directly, because we talked and shared a little bit, as well as family and friends that have gone through these kinds of things. So this is very close and near and dear to each of our hearts. So Rich, start unpacking this a little bit for us about this idea of C-level people, highly competent, very skilled, very smart, very capable people. The people come to them people. What are the answers? Right. What do we do? Where are we going to go from there? So they've got all this, validation about their strength and smartness and all that stuff. But yet there's this closet of darkness that they probably want to stay away from. So give us some unpacking.
We have talked so many times about the stress that you're going to have in executive level positions, those times that you're going to be facing challenges that may seem daunting, that at best. One of the statistics that I looked up, which was surprising to me, that over 11% of all C-level executives in just Fortune 1000 companies have some form of addiction. And that was shocking to me. That's a substantial number. And when you talk about that, why are they not getting help? It was interesting. It said this is one of the most treatable, untreated problems out there, is this executive level addiction issue. And the problem is the people who see this going on all the time, because you do see it. If you're an addict, if you've got those problems, you think you're hiding it from the world, but eventually they know. They know. You may think you're hiding it, but they know. Excuse me. But here's the thing. You've got to seek some kind of help, or trust the people who work around you, or the people who work around you need to be able to say something. They're afraid. They're afraid to come forward and say anything. They're surrounded by a group of people that's probably protecting them.
Very true.
Protecting and enabling as well.
Exactly.
So we start this process then. Sophie, help us with this. There is the strong sense to protect, to deny. This is all part of the survival that an individual has at that C level. And the thinking is that I can outperform myself. I can outdo what it is, that this monster I've got in my closet, or however it is they want to denote it. And so high level of competence, but another level, a lot of fear, and sometimes probably even terror. How does someone get into that thing of going, I got to have some courage, I got to have some honesty about what I got to do about this? How does that begin? How do they start that?
It's a really tricky process, and it can take a very, very long time because, as you just mentioned, there's usually a very quick barrier to say, oh, that's not me, or to push it down. Generally, because executives are at an extremely successful, people in their work. So to even think about the fact that something might not quite be working, and they might not have control over their drinking or addictive behaviors, is quite a hard nut to swallow, or to accept and then actually move through. So generally,
let me ask you something. Why is that? Why is it hard for them to say, there's this that I'm great at, and there's this that I'm not so great at? Why? I mean, that's part of the addiction thing, this kind of black and white thinking, isn't it? It's if I'm all this, I can't be that. But if
that you're right. That's absolutely a cognitive distortion. And because addiction is a complex neurological disorder with its roots in trauma. And so some of what drives us to be so driven and successful and, achieve such results, this incredibly powerful drive, is this drive for a level of perfectionism, getting it right, making it happen. And with that can also come, if there isn't therapy or a cognitive, a real self level of understanding, is the person is a perfectionist. There can be all or nothing thinking, and they're so hard on themselves as well. So they don't accept fault in themselves. They don't accept that they're not able to overcome this addiction through their own drive and discipline. And then denial is an incredibly powerful source that coexists as a cognitive distortion within addiction. So this mechanism of just coping with this element of themselves that they can't cope with.
And also the addiction is serving a purpose in some way. So there is an element of going, oh, but this is working because it's relaxing me at the end of the night, or, oh, it's making me feel less stressed before that presentation. And that's the part we tend to grip onto with hands and feet to go, see, I need to continue because it's actually serving me in some way, and completely disregarding everything else that's falling away because of it as well.
Yeah. It could be relationships. It could be
everything.
Yeah, everything at some level. Ultimately it will be. right?
Yeah. And so that's exactly right. And Sophie brought up a brilliant point. Like normally we start with, drugs and alcohol, and they work. They're very, very quick serving. Like you have a drink, there's this, they do serve a purpose and they serve a function. And in the reward centers of the brain, it's a really healthy functioning. Makes me feel better, I have another one. Makes me feel better, I have another one. And what happens when we cross over into addiction, this tool, this medicine that was actually working for us, then the prefrontal cortex goes offline, and that's when consequences go offline. And then we start getting, then it's a medicine that we need to keep functioning. You actually need it to get on stage. You need it to get up during the day. And what was a solution becomes a problem. But you're so reliant on it. It's such an embedded crutch for you. It's only when you can get to this point of surrendering, of finally getting some realization of just how bad things are, how dear a price you're paying for this thing that was your friend, that was serving you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Rich, you had a talk about getting on stage. Would you like to share that story that you were sharing with us before we started on this podcast?
Absolutely. Previously in my life with, playing music quite a bit, it really, and you talk about getting on stage, you become more dependent on the alcohol or, or whatever it is. And you tease yourself into thinking that, I'm going to be playing really good. I'm feeling fine. I'm going to sound fine. I'm going to get out there in front of everybody. I'm having a great time. And in reality, it's not nearly what you think it is. And it becomes, not only that, it becomes a way of life. And it starts to become more a way of life. Mm-hmm. And in my situation, it was something that was a decision that I could no longer continue down that path. I had to make some changes in my own personal life. And it was for the better. But I'll tell you, there are those that never have. And, their lives are changed. I got to tell you, this whole, and I was telling you earlier, this addiction thing with executives hits hard for me because I've had two very close friends in the last 5 years, both high-level executives, both very successful. From the outside, you would never know it. Great families, they got the perfect jobs, whatever. And both of them ended up kind of succumbing to the stress and having to, they started turning to different issues, and both eventually lost their families, lost their jobs, and then took their own lives. And so it's a serious issue. This is one that it really needs to be addressed. And I think there's a certain fear among executives and people in the workplace that if you've got this problem, if you've got this addiction, you can't say anything about it because there's a stigma around it. You can't say anything about it. You need to continue to hide this, and for whatever reason, you're going to be fine. You keep telling yourself you're going to be fine. I've seen this in my own family. I've seen this, with dear friends, and you're not going to be fine. Here's the problem. If you're in a C-level position, you're a high-level position, your life is going to change. That addiction is going to change your life. You're going to start having mannerisms and decision-making capabilities that are going to be faulty. Yeah, I guess for lack of, another word. But eventually, if you're in a position to guide that corporation, that organization is going to start following your decisions. Your addiction and your decision-making is going to start reflecting on your company. And your company is going to start reflecting who you are. So it's, and like I said, it's the most treatable, untreated problem out there. But yet we hide it. We want to put it under a barrel. We don't want our coworkers to know. We don't want our families to know. We don't want our friends to know. We want to maintain this aura that we've got this great house, this great job, perfect family life, making the kind of money that we all dream about. But at the same time, we're screaming for help on the inside and not knowing what to do about it, but just saying, as long as I look good on the outside to everybody else, I'm fine.
Even though I'm terribly, terribly alone.
Absolutely.
terribly alone, and that's a really big part. And people feel more and more like they're keeping this secret, which is exhausting too. So you are, someone that loves your family and cares about your people and showing up, and then all of a sudden you're drinking in secret and you're lying and you're missing things. So there's all this level of shame. There's so much shame. It's this shame that keeps people stuck, and then there's the external stigma around, that there's something, that this, if mental health or addiction is some kind of moral failing or lack of determination and drive, and the person still has this story that their drive and their perfection has been able to get them successful in all other areas of their life. So they're kind of holding on and creating, but meanwhile, just, more secrets. And also the nature of addiction is in nature, it actually speeds up, starts getting worse. So they're getting darker. It's getting darker and darker. They're hiding more and more and more deception, more lies, and they just get so stuck in this place. And it's such a scary place. And when people get that so ashamed of who they are and they can't find a way out. But I mean, what Soph and I are really passionate about doing is sharing with the world that, this is just, it's so prevalent. Our craving minds, our sensitive minds, our highly driven minds, especially within leadership, the type of people who are leaders are, driven and determined and out of the box thinkers. And it's the beauty of those powerful minds and intuition and capability that are more susceptible to addiction. And there is something incredibly brave and incredibly courageous around actually asking for help and facing up to this. And I was wowed in my corporate career when I actually had the strength to face it. I was running an entrepreneurial group and I was hiding it from all of these women, and I put them all up on a pedestal, and I was keeping my life so shiny. And I admitted it one day, and that was the first stage of, starting to reach out for help. And if you, and I suppose this would be one tip, this is kind of just come organically. If you can find those people that you can trust to tell, and, people will see your strength in your authenticity and your bravery to be courageous. And that is something to aspire to. And the recovery journey is incredibly difficult, but it is one that is also filled with so much joy and so much deeper connection. Because while those people are hiding and putting masks up and lying to keep up this facade, they're desperately lonely because they're actually not connected to anyone or anything. So when they break through that and they're honest and they're truthful, and they can, all of a sudden there's an opportunity for real connection and real love and a whole new life on the other side. But it is really painful, and it's really difficult to reach that surrender point.
So let's talk about some principles here. Thank you both. Let's talk about some principles here. We all know that you must build on strengths. You have to build on truth. You have to build on honesty. And so the lying, the deceptions, the denial, those are always going to be pits of quicksand. They will never, ever, ever work. And so that's what it looks like for these folks, or even for us, that we thought we were like on quicksand. We're out there in the bog, we're on the murk, and there's no place to really stand. There's nothing that we have that is of strength for us. So something that you said earlier, Kylie, was this, and I'd like you both to comment on this. And what seems to be in play, and that's this, how does that happen to some but not to others, is that these people have a kind of hypersensitivity emotionally about life, about people, about just, they have another level, you call it like a superpower that others don't have, that they don't get. They have this. And the other thing is some sort of trauma, something that happened to them. So as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, number one, that kind of extra sensitivity to other people, right? That is actually a strength. But like any strength, it's got to be something that you groom and you cultivate and you learn to manage. You can't just because you got a beautiful horse doesn't mean you can just let the horse go do anything, even though it's magnificent and powerful. You still have to train this horse to do what it needs to do so that both you and the horse, in an interesting way, can be happy working together. The other thing is the trauma, the issue of trauma, and being able to go to a place and say, this is something that happened to me, whatever it was, at some level, it almost doesn't matter. And yet to that person that the trauma happened to, it's incredibly significant. As you're saying, it was shaming, it was shameful even to think about. It's incredibly shameful in that whole thing. But the real principle here is this, is to come to a place of strength and to realize this wasn't my fault. And therein lies the escape from the sand trap, from that sand.
You've absolutely nailed the nail on the head there, because where we can come to with complex trauma, which is the foundation for addiction, that and sensitivity, whatever happened, is, as you're saying, at some degree irrelevant. But there's this, and also addiction is not your fault, but it is your responsibility to recover.
Right. Very good.
And as a leader, and as the head of a family, or with your responsibility to the people that love and care about you, it is not your fault. So you want the thing that's really difficult though is if you're suffering from cancer, people come and bring you flowers and everything else. Addiction, you're hiding away or in rehab, or you hide it altogether. So it's much harder to ask for help. But yeah, it's not the person's fault that they have this complex neurological condition, but it is their responsibility to recover.
That's great. I had a daughter that had some stuff going on to her, and she said almost exactly what you said, Kylie. She had some mental illness, several things that happened to her, and she said, if I was telling people I had cancer, they would understand, but because it's a mental illness, they think it's my fault, and I don't know how to get out of that. I just don't know what to do with that. Sophie, give us some more insight from your perspective about this.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about what you said last about the mental health link that you were just sharing. Actually, addiction is then another layer above that, isn't it? It's not even seen as a mental health issue. It's seen as a completely different thing. So it's really hard to even get accepted as an addict or someone with some addictive behaviors, because you can't even say, oh, it's because of this, and it's my mental health. So it's completely cordoned off in its own shame cave, so to speak, to say, if you ever speak about this, we're going to see you as a weak individual. But I was also thinking about, this might be a little bit off topic, but it came into mind, as leaders, yes, we are talking about leaders with addiction themselves, but in terms of changing culture for teams, leaders have a real opportunity to help reduce that stigma as well, and actually change the culture in their organizations to allow this to come to the forefront a little bit more as an acceptable, completely almost normal, actually, way of coping with life. Because by doing that, it allows employees and teams to feel okay about bringing this up, rather than pressured by continuously trying to achieve and meet targets and exceed goals and things like that.
That's excellent. Yeah, because that really is you're really talking about a 180 shift here, where there's this hyper focus on self and on ego and protecting self and all those kinds of things that go into it. That 180 of that altruism of acceptance and openness, transparency, and coming forth. I mean, that in itself, we could say that is what transformation is. People say, well, what is transformation? In this particular case, it's going from this little tiny scared world to this bigger world of openness and honesty. And all of a sudden, in that process, what you discover is life has joy, real joy. And it also has real reasons to love and to be loved. That's great stuff. How do they get a hold of you, ladies? If they want to contact you and work with you, how do they do that?
So probably the fastest, quickest way is via our website, which is fromhereon.com.au. So that's got lots and lots of extra information on there. There's also a quiz if anyone's thinking they might be teetering on the edge or wanting some confirmation that, yes, they potentially need some help. There's a quiz on there as well, and our contact details. We're also on LinkedIn and Instagram.
Very good. Outstanding. Anything else you'd like to add to that, Kylie?
Yeah, no, and I just say also, we work via Zoom globally. So depending on the severity of the addiction where somebody is. So there's a complementary call to begin with. And then what we tend to do is work once or twice a week in sessions. And then we can also provide more extensive services. So if somebody is really struggling, but they can't do an outpatient, then we can put together kind of a team around a psychologist, recovery coach, somatic worker. So it can be as simple as kind of one session once a week, 1 hour, to move through kind of those, where to meet them exactly where they're at and help them on the path to recovery, and also a much more comprehensive solution if they're really deep into struggling. Yeah. And they really just need we need to alleviate some of that suffering.
Excellent.
Thank you. That's extraordinary. Thank you. I hope you get lots of people contacting you, because you are the people that can help them. I believe that thoroughly. Rich, take us home. Wrap it up.
Okay. Just real quick, I just want to add this. There's a certain stigma around executive coaching, that we're going to come in and we're going to teach you communication skills. We're going to show a few PowerPoints. We're going to, give you a reading list. But it is not that at all. If you were listening tonight and paying attention to what Sophie and Kylie had to say, it's about love. It's about wanting to make those people better, find the better you, teach you those skills to help you avoid these pitfalls. So executive coaching is far more than what you may think it is, and it can really help you out. Every one of us and all the coaches that I know, and Sophie and Kylie, we've all been at one point or another in high-level executive positions and understand the stresses and the problems and the addictions and all those things that you're going through. Reach out. Give us a call. Give Sophie and Kylie a call. Get a hold of me and Michael, Executive Leaders Act, ILEC.com, and set some time up with us. Let's talk. Let's get you to that next level. So once again, thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Kylie. We sure appreciate it. I think it's morning time where you guys are, so enjoy your day. And whoever else out there, enjoy your day, enjoy your evening. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you again next time.
All the best. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Awesome to be on the show.
Bye-bye.